Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all well. So I'm going to be showing you another behind the shot video today. I'm going to be talking through the light setup and how I went about shooting it. And as always, I'd like to just say thanks to everybody that's subscribed, that's been following my channel and my videos, commenting, subscribing, giving me the thumbs up. It's been really great. Now, just to give you a little bit of a background as to the reason why I'm going about creating these videos. As well as being a photographer and videographer, my main profession is I'm in education. So I'm a teacher of fine art and photography. And all of the content that I make, all of the videos, all of the tutorials, everything that I produce, I use it as a teaching tool, not only for you guys out there on YouTube, but also for the students that I teach on a daily basis. So the aim of this photo shoot, again, it's a fashion photo shoot. And the designer who produced these beautiful garments, and I'll just open one up so you can see, had all these wonderfully decorative, intricate, colourful dresses, summer dresses, and they wanted something in terms of a background set, which was clean, which was quite simple, but it was still interesting. So if you've been watching my other videos, you'll realise that I actually create a lot of set design. So this one is a really good example to show you how you can throw a few things together and you can create something quite interesting and simple, which doesn't detract from the actual fashion. So we'll start off first and we'll actually have a look at the set. So I'm going to take this image here, I'm going to make it large for you. So this is the overall set. And if we have a look at the actual background, again, I'm using my wall, which is an MDF wall, and it's supported at the back like as a right angle. And again, I did this in the last video. That's all it is. I had a carpenter make this up for me, and it wasn't really expensive, just 2 pieces of MDF sealed down the middle. And that's really good because it starts as a base for me and I can work around it. Now on the outside, I've got 2 V-flats, foam core V-flats. There's one here. There's one here in the back as well. And both of these have material draped on it, just to create a very subtle texture. It's all about subtleties, this set. Anywhere where there's really a smooth surface, I've tried to minimize by adding a little bit of texture. And then off to the side, we've got another V-flat here. And that's about it in terms of the actual background. Now, the reason why I've got a V-flat here and 2 on either side is it's extending and making the set wider. Okay, and this is important because if you want to try and create variety within a set, you want to be able to shoot a subject from different angles. So for me as a photographer, I'm down here and I'm shooting this way, and then I can be here. And then I can be here, over here. I can even come in all the way over here to the side and shoot. But because I've got a piece of foam core there with material on it, I'm actually ensuring that whichever angle I shoot around in this area, I'm going to have some kind of background to frame the subject, not just empty walls or blinds or anything like that. So it's giving me the flexibility to work around the set and create a background from whichever angle I shoot. Now, I'm just going to rub out some of this stuff just so we can focus on the other parts of the set. Okay, so obviously we've got the backgrounds and the material, and this material is just, I actually found it at a decorator's shop, a paint shop, and they put this on the floor to stop paint from falling on the carpet. And it's very kind of soft, quite thin material actually, and I used a fair amount of that to cover the walls. Again, it adds a nice subtle texture and it doesn't crease up very much either, so it's quite good. The next major thing of the set were these MDF boxes. Now, these were a good investment in the sense, when I purchased these, I did spend a considerable amount of money because I had them made custom made to size, and they were spray painted white, so the finish is fantastic. And also the very, very heavy duty boxes, you can stand on them, you can sit on them. And I've got this one here. I can't remember the exact size, but I think it's at least 1.5 meters tall. And then I've got a shorter one here, and then a cuboid right here. And these are great because they serve for a couple of things. Number one, they serve as platforms for props and objects like the flowers. But they also serve as surfaces for the model to sit on, which is really, really useful as well, because again, it allows you to have a bit of variety. And I've used these in many, many shoots. So we've got obviously the background and we've got the boxes, and I've placed these 3 boxes in a triangular formation. If you see this, this is how I've gone about it. And I've done that on purpose, because when I'm arranging these boxes, I'm thinking about where can the model stand? Where can I put the model and where can she sit? All right. So when I was planning this and I was thinking about the arrangement of the boxes, I was thinking about, right, okay, if I put the model in here, she can actually lean up against this box here. If I put her over here, then she'll be framed by this plant which will be coming behind her. If I sit her down here, then I've got this background and I've got this plant as well. And if I just keep her stood up, then she's got this box in the background, which breaks up the background a little bit, and then she's got a couple of foreground elements as well. So I thought about this kind of triangular setup where we've got box, box, and box. And then I've also placed, as you can see, we've got the plants. And granted, these plants are not all harmonious in the type of plant they are. They don't all link together very well. They are a bit random, but you know what? It doesn't really matter. So these are metal pots here, and they've been covered in the material as well, just so it kind of harmonizes everything and we don't have any shiny metal distracting us. And this one is obviously reaching over, and this one is quite just stand up. And we've also got a plant right over here. And the reason why I've got this plant over here is purely because it will allow me to shoot from behind the plant and create some foreground blur, some foreground interest. And shooting with a 24-70 lens and zooming in at 70 means even if I'm shooting at f5.6 or f8, because of the distance between this foreground element and the model, these plants are going to go out of focus. So let me just show you an example of where I've done that. Okay, so you can see here, and this is one of the images that we shot, and it's not been edited. It's totally straight out of camera. You can see we've got the square box and the plant here framing her, and we've got the material just creating a subtle texture in the background. But then we've also got the foreground elements here, which create just a little bit of visual interest. Here's another example. You can see I'm shooting through the plants. I'm letting them come in, creep into the side here. And this just, again, creates a little bit more dimension to the scene. Now, some people might like it. They might find it distracting. But it gave me options. Obviously, I didn't shoot every picture like this. There was many shots that I didn't even include any kind of foreground interest. But, again, having variety and options on the day is always a good thing. So let me just show you this image here as well. Here you can see the triangular formation. We've got 1, 2, 3, and we've got her framed in here. Again, this is not edited fully. I would probably crop in a little bit at the top, cut in at the bottom just to remove some of the surface. And whilst we're talking about the surface, here I'm just using a vinyl imitation laminate wood floor surface thing. Okay, so it's not actual wood, it's just vinyl. It looks quite convincing. It's very soft underfoot and it's super durable, and I've used that quite a few times in the past. So with the set, and I'll show you the set illuminated by the light setup. That's how it looks. You see, it's quite clean. Again, it's not been edited or anything. The boxes have taken a bit of wear and tear over the years, but you know, again, these are not the type of things that really you are distracted by when you're actually shooting. So that's the way it looks. Now let's go on to the light setup, which I'm sure you've already had a look at as I was going through this. Now, one thing about the light setup is it's one of my setups that I use quite often, especially when I want to create soft, broad, and even light. Okay, I've got a big set here to light, and I could use a light source here, I could have another one here, but you know what? I really don't need to. I can actually get away with using one light, and I often use one light in many of my shoots. It's just the way I kind of like to work. So what we've got here is we've got the 6x6 Lastolite Scrim, which I think is either a half, I think is a half stop of diffusion material. And then we've got the AD 600, sorry, and that's shooting into the Elinchrom Octa. Sorry about that. The Elinchrom Octa. This is the large Octa. This is a 1.5, I think it's 1.5 centimeters wide. But there's no diffusion material on the front of this. You've just got the bare bulb going into the baffle inside, which is spreading the light around, but then we've got no diffusion at the front. The reason is I don't want diffusion here because I've got diffusion here. And what's happening is this light is coming out. Obviously, it's hitting this square, which has more surface area than the Octa, which is increasing the light source. But then you can see the actual spread, like how even this light is. It's beautiful, soft, even light. And even when it starts to fall off, you know, you're talking, it's falling off. This is where your exposure is really changing, around about here. So anywhere the model is in any of these areas, she's getting lovely exposure. And she's not only getting a nice even spread of light because of the big broad light, but we've got white everywhere in the scene. We've got the V-flats, we've got the boxes, we've got the material. So light is just bouncing around everywhere, and it's also creating a natural fill. Let's have a look at that. So here you can see, again, another unedited picture, straight out of camera. Now with the big broad light source, we've got this beautiful transition of highlights going into shadows, and even the highlights are not specular, they're very soft, they're very diffused highlights. But as I mentioned earlier, we're also getting something else. We're getting natural fill. We're getting a lovely fill light which is bouncing around here and coming back into our model's face. So we still have that element of three-dimensionality, and this for me is really important. I really don't like very often shooting where lighting is totally flat. Occasionally it calls for it, you have to do it. But I do like to create modeling in the face by having light which is coming from an angle. Now if the model is to turn into the light more, then naturally the fill element here will disappear and she'll be more kind of front lit, and there'll be a more even exposure on the face. But it also depends on my angle. If when I'm shooting I come in from over here, and I'm just going to clear all this up. If I'm shooting from over here this way, then the model's face is going to appear more in shadow. Half her face will appear more in shadow because I'm actually moving around towards the opposite side of the light. Whereas if I was to come and shoot this way, then now I'm actually on the same axis as the light and I'm getting an even illumination on the face. So let me just show you that as an example. So if we were to look at, say, like this picture here, You can see it's quite even on her face because I'm actually shooting directly underneath at this point the light source. But even then, having the model simply turn and dip her head down a little bit still will create a very subtle amount of modeling here. There is a slight difference in exposure. It gets a little bit darker here. So you still have that retention of three-dimensional form. Here's another example with this picture. I'll bring this one up here and I'll show you where she's sat. She's sat right here on this chair, and this plant is the other plant. So she's looking down. So we're actually putting this side of her face is going into shadow, whilst this side is obviously being illuminated. But look at how beautifully soft that transition is. It doesn't look artificially lit. It's a very, very soft form of light, a very soft light setup. So that's the light setup. One light setup, lots of fill. Now you might be thinking, what on earth is this piece of, well, what looks like tracing paper? It's just again there as a little feature, as a little visual interest element. And what I was doing was this, is I was trying to see how it might look if I actually create a semi-transparent screen, which will obviously mute and subdue all the colors back here, and create like this separation. Could it work? Would it look cool? I put that up. I can't remember if I actually used it in the end. You can see these are all the pictures that were taken for this shoot, and we had a hell of a lot of different pieces to get through on the day. So there's quite a few pieces. Although I put that screen up, I don't think I used it very much. Here's one image that I shot where I did use it, and it was there, but I found in the end it just looks a little bit odd. But you know what? If you don't try it, then you're not going to know how it looks. So that is it in terms of the actual light setup and the way it was shot. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and I'm going to fly through this edit because when I do edit this kind of work, I don't work slow, I work quick. I've got lots of images to get through, so I just fly through it. Now, I would normally create these adjustments in Lightroom and I would sync them all up with all the pictures in the set, but just for this, I'm just going to go through Camera Raw. First thing I'm going to do, and I always do this, I tend to bring down my temperature to 4600, and what this does, it just takes a little bit of the yellow and orange out of the skin. It just cools the skin, always seems to give me a more pleasant neutral base. In terms of the exposure straight out of the camera, you see, perfect, right? We've kind of nailed that exposure wonderfully well. We're shooting at f5.6, 1/100th of a second, 24-70. This is shot at 52 millimeters, basically 50 millimeters. And we're shooting at ISO 400. Now you might be thinking, why are you not shooting at ISO 100 and just simply increase the light power? Well, shooting at ISO 400 means my light will recycle far quicker and I don't have to use as much power, which means I can shoot quicker. And for me, ISO 400, ISO 100, there is no difference. Shooting on the 5D3, it handles noise perfectly fine. Now at this point, I can add a little bit of sharpening, and sometimes I do that in Lightroom. I'll add a little bit of sharpening at this point, and we are really only talking about a little bit. And then that's about it. I don't need to bring out any more details in the shadows or anything like that. Everything looks good, and I'll just crack this image open. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a cleanup, and for this I'm going to use the patch tool. I'll just circle drag, and I'll just quickly clean up these little bits. It's fairly straightforward and quick. We've got a little bit of thread here. Now I could use the clone tool, but this is far quicker than the clone tool. Let's see, got a couple of little divots here. Now, did I edit all these little bits out for the actual final thing? Nope, not at all. And the reason why, pretty simple. I knew the output of where these images were going, and that was only on Instagram. So if you know what the output is, that can save you a lot of time. This is where I will use the stamp tool because I'll get a cleaner finish there. Let's just reset my brush. I had it as a hard brush. I'll sample a little bit higher. Yeah, if you know what your output is, Instagram and so forth, that's obviously going to determine the level of edit you do. Because when you are, you know, presenting an image on Instagram, you really do not need to be doing this kind of thing. The visual, the physical size of the image is going to be so small, you're not even going to see anything. Simply here as well, like getting rid of all these stray hairs, just not needed because of where it's going. But again, for this video, I'm going to show you how I do that. And it's very, very simple. I'm just going to use the clone stamp tool, and I'll just sample, and I'll just clean this up. And when I'm cleaning this up, I'm also going to use the rotate command. This is going to allow me to get a much more natural stroke, hand stroke when I'm actually coming down here. I'll pick this out, bring this down here. Again, just clean this up fairly quick. Again, it does not have to be perfect at all. Bring this lady back into check. Yeah. Oh, no, we're not there. There we go. And, you know, that would be it. Now I'm going to go in and I'm just going to clean up a little bit here and also just show you the way I do that. I'm going to use the spot healing brush and I'm going to set my mode to lighten. What this means is it's going to remove everything that's dark. It's going to lighten it. So this is great because it'll just pinpoint the dark hairs. Just paint over these like that. And I can often use this on skin blemishes because they normally are darker. And what else is really good is when you've got these hairs which are too dark, you can also get rid of those. But in this case, you can see the stray hairs that are distracting are the light hairs. So this is where we pick the darken tool. And all we have to do is run it across and it will get rid of those. It will make them darker. And again, I really do not need to be neat here. I can just be really quick and rough. In fact, I shouldn't even be doing this if I was, again, only giving out to Instagram. Because it's not a close-up, you know, if the shot was here, I would clean it up. But because it's not, I know it's going to be seen from here, there's really no need. Okay. What else shall we do? Okay, let's look at the neck here. Now, there are many ways to clean this up. You can dodge, you can burn, you can blah, blah, blah. We could just go back to the patch tool. And I'll show you what we can do here. So I'm just going to create this selection like this. I'm going to pull this down into an area of clean skin. And I'll do a deselect, and that's gone. So I'll come around here. And I'm doing this jagged selection because it blends better than if you just do a normal selection. I'll get rid of this blemish here and here and here. Now, for a natural retouch, you want to try and leave a lot of things in. It's not about what you take away, actually. It's about what you leave in. And by leaving in things that are visible, imperfections, it gives the illusion that the retouch is a lot more natural. I will just pick this, click on lighten, and I'll just clean up this little area of hair on the face, just because it is a little bit annoying. But I don't want to go over the top. I'm not going to get rid of that little mole there because it's quite nice. And that's cleaned up really the major blemishes. There are obviously neck hairs and so forth, and you can decide on what level of retouch you want to do and how much of that you want to clean up. But for me, I'm happy. Now I'm going to go through my really quick cleanup process. So I start with frequency separation. I go into my lower layer. I pick the mixer brush tool. I keep my settings at 20% wet. The flow is at 30%. And then here I just simply brush and paint. I'm just going to look for areas of uneven skin tone, and I'm just going to smooth. But I'm only working on the underneath layer, which is the color and value. So we're only dealing with light and dark, and we're also dealing with the color. We're not dealing with anything to do with texture. It's purely color. And I'll just go very extreme here so you can see what's going on. We're actually mixing the colors, right? So if I pull out here, I'm pulling out the brown. So the idea is we're pulling and we're pushing and we're painting and we're just smoothing out very gently. We're not going heavy with this, so we don't want it to look like she's made of plastic. Okay, I'll just turn this off so you can see a before and after. Before, after. Okay, now that looks quite good. Now you will notice that her skin and her neck colour here is different to her neck colour here. That's because she's obviously had makeup applied, and makeup is not always perfectly matched to the natural skin tone. So what we can do right now is first I'll make a stamp visible. I will create a new layer. I'll get a brush. I will pick this colour. I'll go back to my normal brush. I'll pick this colour, which appears here. I'll change the mode to colour, and I will bring this opacity down to about 52%, and I'm just going to paint here on this neck. And now we've harmonized the neck color with the face. I'll just turn that off and on, and we've brought those together. I'll just do that bit there. Okay, so retouch over, done. Final thing, I'll just merge these layers. If I wanted, I could do some kind of grade on this. Let's come in with a color balance. Let's say in the highlights, we might want to drop in a little bit of cyan. And then maybe in the shadows, we might want to drop in a little bit of blue, maybe even a little bit of magenta. And then you can create your own little grade. Now what I find is when I play with these values, in particular when I work with the highlights, pushing them to cyan, and the midtones more towards blue and magenta, you'll notice what it does is it gives us a much crisper, cleaner, brighter, more neutral image right there. Now again, this would be something I would normally do in Lightroom as opposed to doing it right now in Photoshop, because again, I need to do things which will allow me to batch process. But anyway, that color balance makes a huge difference. It just freshens things up, sharpens things up, and then that's it. There, we're done. No dodging, no burning, clean, soft, beautiful. And then I would do my file, save as JPEG, but then I'd also export this and save it for web as well. This will just ensure that if the pictures are opened up on a mobile phone or anywhere else, the colors will stay true, and we'll get a smaller file size as well. And that is it. Hopefully you found this video useful. Once again, as always, please give me your support, give me a thumbs up, a like, leave a comment, and I will catch you in the next video.